Everything is pointing towards the Minnesota Vikings having a regression this season. Last year, the Vikings indeed did win the NFC North with a 13-4 record, and they looked good on paper, but if you really dig into it even more and you look at it, the Vikings had a -3-point differential last year, which that's horrible for being a team that won 13 games. The Vikings did indeed end up make the playoffs last year, but they pretty much got clapped up by Danny Dimes in the first round. In the games last year the Vikings lost, they lost bad. I mean, getting clapped 7-27 by the Philadelphia Eagles, losing 40-3 to the Dallas Cowboys, losing to the Lions 23-34, and getting clapped by the Packers 17-41. And all the games they lost to some good teams, and they pretty much got absolutely destroyed in those games. And with the games that they won, they really didn't have a convincing blowout win. They won by a few points, and in my opinion, this explains for the -point differential, and I don't think that a team can consistently keep doing winning games by 3 points, because I don't think you can just keep doing this over and over again. So the Vikings, in my opinion, are also a very confusing team. I mean, their quarterback, Kirk Cousins, which is, in my opinion, a super underrated quarterback, but he's 34 years old. He's starting to get up there in age. The Vikings are going to have to think about who is going to be their quarterback of the future. That's another thing that just adds to this Vikings team, because Kirk is 34. I mean, you're going to have to find a replacement eventually. They also just released their Pro Bowl running back in Dalvin Cook, so their starting running back right now is going to be Alexander Mattison, which, of course, Alexander Mattison is not Dalvin Cook. And then, of course, we should all know about Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the NFL, put up monster numbers last year. We should all know about him and how good his connection with Kirk Cousins is and how good of a wide receiver Justin Jefferson is. Now, this is where my huge problem with the Minnesota Vikings come in. Their defense is horrible. Oh my god, it's bad. Last year they ranked 26th in the NFL. That's pretty bad for a 13-win team, in my opinion. That offense was pretty much carrying everything. This defense was so bad that the defensive coordinator, Ed Dontel, lost his job. That's how bad this defense was. Like when I broke it down earlier, this defense was so bad when the offense couldn't do anything, they lost. And they lost big, as you can see in those scores earlier in the video that I was talking about. Reading and looking at this defense on this depth chart, there's not really as many players as you would think would poke your eyes up, be like, oh, he's a huge playmaker. I mean, they got Harrison Smith still there. They got Byron Murphy Jr. now, Jordan Hicks, Marcus Davenport. They also have Danielle Hunter. He had 10.5 sacks last season, which is some great numbers, but there's rumors that the Vikings are also trying to trade him. So this Vikings defense is pretty much in shambles, especially if they trade Danielle Hunter. In my opinion, he's one of the best players on this Vikings defense. It's just going to get worse from here. But the one thing that this Minnesota team did, which I really like, in my opinion, is they hired Brian Flores as defensive coordinator. I actually really like Brian Flores, and I'm happy that he got his job in Minnesota to be this defensive coordinator. I think he can do a good job. I think he's really good at coaching defenses. He might be able to get a little sneaky player, some out of one of these players on this depth chart that we don't know about that's that good. He might be able to like bring them out and have them play good. We don't know. But in my opinion, I think Brian Flores is going to do great here. This thing is, the players are just not that eye-dropping, I should say. The Vikings had an interesting draft, to say the least. In the first round, they ended up drafting Jordan Addison out of USC, which, in my opinion, I thought they would have went defensive here because I feel like their defensive needs are more important than their offensive needs. I understand that they need a wide receiver too, something like Adam Thielen go, but I know they need a wide receiver too for the future. I thought they would have drafted one in the later rounds, so not spent this high of a draft pick when you probably need something on defense instead of something on offense. But I do think Jordan Addison is going to be a great receiver. But in the later rounds, they do pick some defensive players like Mekhi Blackmon, CB out of USC, Jay Ward, safety in the 4th round, nose tackle in the 5th round. They end up drafting a QB in the 5th round in Jorwan Hall out of BYU. And with their last pick in the 7th round, they end up drafting a running back, which he might be a little sneaky running back to run with, Alexander Mattison. We'll see how that goes though. Very interesting draft by the Vikings. So like I said, the only thing I'd probably change is maybe draft some defensive talent in the 1st round instead of Jordan Addison, even though I do think Addison is going to be great. And the Vikings schedule this year, it's not easy. They play some tough teams. To break it down, they already played Detroit twice a year, which in my opinion, that's who I have the winning the North this year. They also play Kansas City, San Francisco, and the Chargers in some games. I mean, those are going to be some tough games. I think the Bears might be able to contend for a 7th seed this year. I think Denver's going to be better than what they were last year. They are very lucky they end up playing the NFC South this year because those all are games that they can win. They also play Cincinnati, the Raiders. They could be a game they could drop. Sometimes they'll drop some games to the Packers. They have a tough schedule. They could end up dropping off a lot of these good teams like they did last year. There's a lot of questions with this Vikings team, and I can see them definitely dropping a lot of games this year. With breaking all this down, I definitely see regression from the Minnesota Vikings this year, but I only don't see them regressing this year. Their future is in big question. Like I was talking about earlier, Kirk Cousins, he's 34, he's getting old. They're really going to have to start thinking about what they want to do at QB in the future. I know they drafted a QB this year, but they really think that he's going to be able to step in after Kirk Cousins and replace him? No. So the Vikings really do got to think about this. What are we going to do after Kirk Cousins, after his time is done? Who are we going to replace him with? Are we going to have to tank for somebody? Are we going to sign somebody? They're going to have to figure that out eventually, because I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a problem once it gets there. I'm just going to be looking at this as a possibility. No guarantees this happened. The Vikings might have a plan, but they are going to have to give Justin Jefferson a huge contract after the years that he's been having. But here's my thing. Is Justin Jefferson going to want to be there if the future of this team is uncertain? Like, if Justin Jefferson signs his contract and then the team is just horrible, they go on a few years where they're just winning like 6 to 4 games and it's just bad, is he really going to want to stay there? Because remember, they're going to have to give him a bag. If you look at his stats from this year, he's going to have to get one of the biggest contracts ever in NFL history for a wide receiver, probably the biggest. But it's like, is he really going to want to be there still if the quarterback play is that bad? The one thing that the Vikings do have, which I will admit is nice, they do still have their first round picks. They have their first, second. Next year, they also have in 2025 their first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And in 2026, they have all their draft picks, which is amazing. But they could trade those away in the near future for something big. You never know what the Vikings might do. But I will admit, they do have some draft picks. So if they do need to tank, they still got their picks. So it's going to be really interesting to see what this Viking team does and what the GM does in the future. So in conclusion, I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to regress and their future is going to be in question, and they might see a lot of regression in the future. Like I said, Kirk Cousins, underrated quarterback, he's getting old. Dalvin Cook is now gone. They're going to have to pay Justin Jefferson a bag even though he's still there. TJ Hawkinson, he's a great tight end. The defense is horrible. I don't like what they're doing on the defense. It's really bad as I broke it down. There's not a lot of good players on that defense. I do like how they hired Brian Flores though. And their drafting this year, it was okay. Like I said, I wouldn't have drafted Addison in the first round. I would have drafted some defense, but it's interesting to see what they're going to do. I can't wait to see what the GM's going to do with the future. Is there's going to be something that he can do to change this Minnesota team and make them actually good in the future. And I wonder who is going to be their quarterback and who is going to be throwing to Justin Jefferson after Kirk Cousins. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please smash that subscribe button. It truly helps the channel. Also drop a like. I want to know what y'all think about the Minnesota Vikings. So how do you guys think their future is going to be? Like I said, I see regression, but maybe y'all guys see something else. I would love to hear your guys' opinions on it. Like I said, these 2 videos right here, amazing work by me. I recommend y'all go watch them. And I hope all of y'all out there have a nice day. I'll see y'all in the next video.